Welcome to the NerdNest Podcast. This is our fourth podcast. I'm Sarah Montgomery, NerdNest Social Media Manager. In the description of this video, you'll find links to all of our social media sites, our site, and our blog, so please check those out. This week, my guests are...
I'm Sarah's friend, Ben.
I'm Josh.
Okay. So, when they showed up, I walked out to the parking lot to come and get them, and they were in Ben's car watching the trailer for Last Guardian. I don't know why they come in the air conditioning and do that, but regardless. You guys had some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of like catch up with E3 and get like all that I could know about it and just make sure that I was well rounded on it. And through watching all of these different sorts of trailers and demos and all this sorts of thing, The Last Guardian stood out to me so much because it really felt real. It almost didn't feel like a video game. It felt like a movie I was watching, and every bit of it just seemed so engaging with the way that you engage the environment. How it's like you describe the actual like way the game works.
I definitely am gonna like piggyback off what you said earlier. How the not having a HUD is very noticeable, like immediately is I think it like just boosts overall immersion, and like that's one of my favorite things to do. I know for Battlefield is like strip the HUD and just make it like just the game itself.
So you can do everything that you can to make yourself feel like you're actually there.
Yeah.
Like an interactive movie.
Yeah.
Basically.
It's
Yeah.
Now,
gorgeous.
what I hear a lot of people talk about when they're talking about games is they kind of, it's almost like they feel like with video games, you either get a really interesting and engaging narrative or really fun gameplay. But like Last of Us is like, you play it for the story. That's why you're playing Last of Us. No one's playing Last of Us because it's like super like engaging and difficult like to maneuver.
Right.
It's about the story of the game. Whereas other games, it's about, like, I guess Arkham Knight is probably like this way, where you're playing it because of all of the different tools that you use and all the different button combinations and the way that you play the game. And I don't feel like the game companies are good at mixing those two things.
Well, I would say that back in its prime, I think that the Assassin's Creed series did a really good job of mixing that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times the storyline was kind of, what's going on, what is this? But with the overall Desmond storyline in the real world, that's a great storyline. And then you get into all this sort of stuff with like the gods, and you're meeting the gods, and Ezio's mind is just being blown left and right. You know, that's a really engaging storyline. But specifically with the trilogy that makes up Assassin's Creed 2, the one that takes place in Italy, the gameplay, it's so interactive and it's so creative, and the environment is something that makes the game really special and unique. Mm-hmm. It pairs well with a really good storyline. And that's like one example where I've seen it mix well. I can't think of any others just right off the top of my head like that.
Assassin's Creed definitely like has a place in my heart for like narrative and like what you were saying, like a lot of companies don't do that like mesh of the really nice narrative, but also like not necessarily difficult, but just technically inspired kind of gameplay. And Assassin's Creed is one that definitely does it. One of like my all-time favorite, Mass Effect, does it really well. And Arkham Knight, what you said, is honestly they surprised me. Like, I'm not gonna go too far into details, but like the narrative is by far, in my opinion, the best Batman narrative that I've seen. And not to mention, it's got amazing mechanics, and it's got really, I mean, it's just
with
great.
the added mechanics in this one with the dual play and the Batmobile that they've added. It's a lot heavier. Which we were talking about this the other day. We're talking about a lot of people are irritated by game companies because they pre-order a game, and then the game they get is not the game they were promised, or it's broken, or it has a lot of bugs, or they say, oh, we're going to patch it later and fix X, Y, and Z, and they don't, because it's been 2 weeks, so all of the sales are complete anyway, so why would we bother? And, you run into a lot of issues with that, where the game becomes, like, kind of inaccessible to people. They're like, they start mistrusting game companies for that reason. so that people stopped pre-ordering. Basically, some people have stopped pre-ordering for things, and it kind of speaks to one of the big controversies at E3 was when Sony came out on stage and they're like, guys, big news, we're making Shenmue 3, and you're gonna pay for it. And everyone's like, oh my god, this is so great! It's like, you have money! And of course, I think after they kickstarted it for a while, they said, okay, now we're gonna pay. Sony's like, now we're gonna pay for it. And I was like, okay, well then why did we kickstart it at all? But I think what I liked about the Batman games is that the developers put everything they could and they just rammed into a game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the next game, they had to come up with new stuff. Whereas a lot of games do this where they think they have all right, here's what we're gonna put in the first game and the second game and the third game. Not that they didn't plan the plot and the action line, but they add new things. So instead of what a lot of game companies fall into, which I think Assassin's Creed might have done and Halo, where they go, we'll just save this feature for the next game.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
As opposed to putting it in this one and then coming up with a new feature later, which is why you get kind of an emptiness.
Well, I think in terms of like trusting game companies on that sort of thing, I was reading up on it a little bit, and I came to the realization that, wow, Bethesda is they are really good about making sure that they're putting out quality stuff. Like, I remember reading like Fallout 4, I can't remember, it was like they said they were going to start making it, or it was going to come out like a handful of years ago, and then it was going to be for Xbox 360 or PC, that generation of gaming, that sort of stuff. And they were not capable of producing, what exactly it was that they wanted to produce. And so they just nixed it for that. They waited for the next generation, and now Fallout 4 is going to run, I think on both, I can't remember what console it was for or what it said, but 1080p at 30 frames per second. And it's like that, they're getting good enough at this to be able to take these massive games and make them run super smoothly and super efficiently. And it really speaks to the quality that Bethesda is going for, that they're willing to wait, and they're not willing to be one of those companies that will release a game just because they have a game ready, basically. Just because they have something that they can put out there, it'll make money. They really want to make a good game, and I think it really speaks to the goodness of the company.
Jumping on the Bethesda train, a problem that a lot of gamers have right now is that everyone is super about pre-ordering. We knew about the Division 3 years ago, and that game comes out first quarter 2016.
Yeah, but then I want to pre-order because I want that really crappy DLC that's going to come out with the game.
Well, and
have you seen that drawstring bag?
I mean, it's pretty stylish.
That's they throw out these little perks, and
wait, there's more.
Right, you have to understand with the gaming community, it's not just people like you playing or people like my brothers who are, they have a job, they have to actually consider their finances when they're deciding do I really want to pre-order this if I'm not sure how the game is going to work? I'm probably going to want to research this a little first and listen to some reviews. There's a lot of kids on these platforms, as I'm sure we all know from the headsets, all them saying very inappropriate things about our mothers. Those kids don't take that kind of stuff into consideration. And with the internet and with video games, those are the most likely to community to just constantly complain. Regardless of what's happening, something is good to complain about. Without fail. E3 comes out, they announced, last year at E3 they announced the PS4 and the Xbox One. Everyone was like, oh,
no.
Everything's going to be terrible. There's no good games. This is horrible. And then this year they're like, well, they're not announcing any new consoles because E3, so E3 is going to be kind of boring. Well, I'm sorry, little baby.
Make a console every year.
I want innovation.
I think part of that for PS4 and Xbox One was that last year, I think Wii U just won over.
Yeah, which was strange because I never.
I really liked it because I'm a Nintendo person. Like, Nintendo just came out and they killed it, and there was so much to offer.
Did you see their presentation at E3 this year?
No, I did not.
Right.
It was so funny. I was obviously, since I'm a social media person, I have to live stream all of the big events at E3 and keep up to date with it so I can tweet to you guys. But regardless, I was watching the press conference. I entered like 2 minutes late, and there was just Muppets on the screen. And I was like, what's going on? And then the Muppets like meet the other Muppets, and they meet the other Muppets. So it's like the 3 big guys at Sony, like, I think the one that created Super Mario Bros., the American CEO, and then the Japanese head of some department. Those are the 3 Muppets. And they came out and they were like getting ready to start the press conference. And then they turned into the characters from Star Fox. Like the Muppets morphed. Like, one of them grew a beard, the other one had like fox ears come up. Like, what am I watching? So that's what I've always appreciated about Nintendo is that they maintain that childlike essence, but without compromising the platform for people our age. So we're not gonna we're not gonna play a Nintendo game and think it's not like the game equivalent of watching Dora the Explorer. Because that is a children's cartoon, and it's not made for people like us. Whereas Adventure Time is a children's cartoon, but we can watch it. Right. Nintendo does a good job of that, where it's very accessible for all people, which is why it's such a popular console. Because when my mom, who doesn't know anything about video games, thinks, oh, I want to get the kids a present for Christmas, she immediately thinks video games, and then from there she goes, Mario.
Like Nintendo's the most accessible thing.
Because that's what she knows. Yeah. She knows Mario. So she's like, obviously the Wii U is the best platform. And it's like, well, maybe for us it's the Xbox One. But, you know, I'm glad you tried. Very sweet. Thank you, Mom. We ended up getting an Xbox One. Because we told her, we knew that was going to be an issue. We're like, hey, just so you know, get us an Xbox One, we might get the Wii down the road. Now Daniel wants the Wii just so that he can play Smash Bros.
Yeah,
honestly, it's so 8-player Smash is basically the best thing I've ever done. Ever in my entire life.
I like how Nintendo has like remained relevant through you've got Sonic, you've got Mario, you've got Pokemon, you've got like Star Fox.
I find it odd that Sonic was the first thing you said on Nintendo.
I did it, and Yoshi.
To be fair, yes.
I always think Mario first. On that.
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
What I think.
Gotta go fast.
I think with the main 3, you've got like Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft. They all have very different mentalities on how they want to move forward with their consoles and like adapting what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Nintendo's philosophy has always been innovation is the future. So they're always like, they have something they're like, hey, what if we could interact with the game with like movement on your body? Or it's like, what if we had a controller with a screen in it? But it wasn't like a mobile game like we used to have, it's like a console. It's like, okay. Sony's like, if it's not broke, I'm not gonna fix it. They're like, this has consistently been a great thing for us, so we're gonna keep going with this because everyone likes this. Xbox is like, all right, we hear you about your complaints. We'll change some things. So they move the button from here to here. Accidentally hitting it. And that's what I think is very interesting about those 3 companies is they have very clearly, you can see in their press conference, like, okay, so this is Nintendo going, what if we made Yoshi out of yarn?
See, okay, here's something I hate about this game, and it's kind of, it gets into like a little more obscure Nintendo games, but there's this Yoshi yarn game thing, whatever, and it looks all cute and fluffy, but, you know, the original DS, there was a game that was, you know, Kirby's Epic Yarn, that's what it was, Kirby's Epic Yarn, and it was this game, it was a follow-up of Canvas Curse where, you know, you draw lines and Kirby follows them. But the whole premise of the game is a yarn, and I have to ask, I can't help but wonder, why is Nintendo obsessed with fabric and yarn and things like that? Like, why are they doing the same thing with Yoshi that they did with Kirby?
I know, they were talking about it, and the woman that was talking about this game was saying, like, everyone else was there and they were, like, working on something, they had something to contribute, and I'm not, like, a game designer. So, but I wanted to contribute to the idea of this, so I knitted a Yoshi. And that's what she did, and that's where the game idea came from, and they started like creating this world around this one woman's idea, which is a great thing about Nintendo, is that ideas that are that small and that come from like such a strange place are able to be heard and brought to management's attention and then put into development for an actual game. That doesn't happen in a lot of countries. Like, so I give Nintendo a lot of props. They do good. What I also find interesting about Nintendo that I give them props for, but I probably shouldn't, is that it's because something always happens with Nintendo where people get really upset with them, and then it's like instantly forgotten with an added nostalgia or something. Like there was that whole thing with like Let's Players that wanted to play Nintendo games and like do a Let's Play of like Mario or something, and then Nintendo comes in to say something like, oh yeah, you can do that, but we get 70% profit off of that video. And everyone gets really upset at Nintendo, and then they're like, we're introducing Rie-u to Smash Bros. And it's like, this is the best thing. But
Does Nintendo actually do that? Like, was that a specific example you gave where they're kind of like
they,
doing their Let's Plays? I didn't know that Nintendo.
I'm not sure if that's if that was the exact number. But they've had that policy for a while, or a similar policy where they wanted, because they have a lot of family content video games, they were not, like they would ban games, like Let's Plays with like foul language in it, I think for a while was what they did. And then they've kind of like moved away from that and moved towards like, how can we profit off of this? So the Let's Play community is like, yeah, Nintendo, you know where to shove it. I don't know how to tell you. That's not okay. Don't do that to me. We're freely promoting your content for you and showing people how much fun they have in this game.
Yeah.
And that's like
payment.
Just for the audience, by the way, I don't play any video games. I literally just watch a bunch of Let's Plays because I don't have time to play video games. It's not as much as I'd like. But like for people like me not seeing all of the gameplay of Nintendo games hurts Nintendo.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to recommend it to people. I'm not going to buy the game when I start, like, when I actually have time to play a game. I'm not going to play a Nintendo game because I don't have that experience right in front of me.
Right.
But maybe that's just me.
I have to go back to Nintendo because in reviewing everything, so many things are making me mad right now.
Okay.
I was telling Ben in the car a little bit. So, with the Metroid series right now, Metroid, my personal favorite Nintendo series, you can get really into the story, and there's a lot of really cool plot stuff that happens, both in Prime and in the original. And what they're doing right now is they are releasing a new game, which is you play as characters of the Galactic Federation, which is basically this big, Galactic Federation that takes place in this universe. But you don't actually play as Samus in this game. You play as, as I said, members of the Galactic Federation, and it makes me think of this direct parallel to Halo ODST, where they were releasing a bunch of really solid games, and then they kind of ran out of ideas. But they had other people to work with, so they went out and worked with them.
If you were saying that ODST is anything less than the greatest gift that Bungie has bestowed upon Halo Universe.
Whoa. I'm going to back you up right there. Halo 3 was way better.
Halo 3 was really cool. Okay. Halo 3.
Here we go.
Halo 3, Halo 2, and Halo Combat Evolved. Wonderful games. Wonderful.
Amazing games.
First-person shooter games. But ODST is not... There are a lot of people who think that ODST was like Bungie's kind of like cop-out of like, we don't really have like what we want to do here. We don't really know what the next step is. But they were pushing the lore in the game of like from the books and like building the lore for especially the Reach launch. Like because Reach is like, I've only read one Halo book and it was Reach, and that's still one of my favorite books. Like it's so good, and they were expanding the universe and like showing. So you've seen what Master Chief is. You see how OP he is. You see how nothing hurts him. Like now, go over into this drop shop trooper. Go over to this guy who's like the backup, who's like the first task force, like who is so good that they get sent from orbit to attack this whatever. And they're not invincible. They don't have like the Mjolnir armor. They don't have like shields.
Yeah, you're right.
The
health system that they did that.
Yeah.
That was a really cool health system in that video. I like that.
Like ODST, and yes, it's not the best Halo, but it definitely isn't like.
Halo 3 is better than Halo ODST, right?
I'll go ahead and say that.
Thank you.
Alright, that's all we really wanted. So.
But you think back, I think Bungie knew how great Halo 3 was, because when they released ODST, it came with the Halo 3 multiplayer. Do you remember that?
I think it came with the Halo 3 multiplayer with like the it was the all-encompassing like DLC disc where it was like
they had the two discs.
It was everything that they had, and I think that's
was everything like unlocked and everything. Was that
everything.
how it worked?
Like you had what was it?
That was
Cold
forever
Storage.
ago.
You had Ghost Town. You had like all of those like new maps.
Are so good.
I think that's really because like the Bungie like built themselves as like the multiplayer, like okay, multiplayer like online gaming. That was pretty much Halo. Like the first showcase, like playing with other people over distances was Halo, especially with Halo 2.
Well, at the same time, and Call of Duty.
Well, yeah, like people caught on the train fast, pretty fast. But like E3 2008 or maybe like 2007, multiplayer like 8-person multiplayer Halo 2.
Oh my god!
On what? Valhalla? That was. It was
amazing.
But I think that they had to give the multiplayer disc because their player base was already thinking, okay, it's Halo, which means multiplayer, which means I'm gonna jump into like let's go play some multiplayer. But ODST, as you can remember, was firefight and cooperative, not necessarily
They
competitive.
introduced a lot of cool things in that game.
And like new ideas, and I think they needed to give that multiplayer disc for those people expecting a multiplayer experience and getting.
So that way the game would actually sell.
Wanted.
Alright, so before we wrap things up, I just wanna, just curiosity, what was your first console that you owned / played on?
Does handheld count?
Sure.
Mine was a good old-fashioned Game Boy Color.
What about you, Ben?
Mine was a GameCube.
Mine was a Nintendo 64. Do you remember your first game?
Sonic Adventure 2 Battle.
Oh man.
Right.
It was, I think it was Pokemon Blue. I think that was my first game.
This is not surprising.
I was a child and I was absolutely terrible
You're
at that
still a
game.
child.
I'm a man-child. There's a huge difference.
I think my first game was, let's see, it was Nintendo 64, so it would either been like Donkey Kong 64, Hydro Thunder, or like one of the James Bond games. We played the
GoldenEye, probably.
Maybe.
That was like the one. I think there were two that came out for 64, but yeah.
But me and my brothers, we used to play that on multiplayer all the time.
Oh,
That was like what we always defaulted to. But yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you.
For everyone out there, again, the links to all of our social media, our site, and our blog are in the description. If you have any suggestions for what you want us to talk about next week, please leave it in the comments, or any suggestions for guests or things in general if you don't want them back. For
Shia LaBeouf.
And Liam Neeson.
Or next week, join us for my guests, Shia LaBeouf and Liam Neeson. Alright, bye guys. See you next week.